Okay, as requested, this is a tutorial for making a bladed weapon in 3ds Max. We're going to cover the full 3D modeling workflow, getting it ready for unwrap, but that will be covered in a subsequent video for unwrapping and texturing this piece. So there is a text document that goes with this, which I'll be using as a script to follow. Please make sure that you use this video as well, and don't just use the text document. This is more for my guidance, just to make sure we encounter the same errors as we go through. This was the outcome of the creation of the script, and what I should expect we should all have by the end of this. So we have the different components. I've ramped up the turbo smooths to get the nicest outcome that we can, but we've got the nice beveled edges for the blades, and we can see the reflections going on, the cutout that we can see on the reference of other 3D models. So this over in the bottom left is a pure ref window. We've just grabbed some reference. I've locked it in the bottom corner because I don't really use this viewport very much. We've got all of the different components for the wings and hilt and handle of the sword, and whatever technical sword terminology I may have just got wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct me on. Let's go move this off and start from scratch on this. All right, let's hide, unselect it. There we go. Right then. ZMP, center up our perspective frame. So some of the things that you might also want to consider for following along with this tutorial is just setting up your workspace, making sure that your units are set up, and that you are working in the same orientations as me, and I'll cover that in a second. Make sure that you don't work with just one column over here. I've got a high resolution monitor, so I have 3, but if you're working at 1080p, probably 2 is most recommended for you. So now let's go get that back to how I like it. All right, so the first thing we need to do is get one of these images into 3ds Max, so that we can use it as reference. All right, so what we're going to do is grab a plane, and we're just going to remove all of the segments, and move it to the center of the world. So W on the keyboard and right click there to center it up. All right, so we're going to press M, and that brings up our material editor. If you get the slate material editor, go onto modes and compact material editor. Okay, now I've done this once before already and created a material, but I will create another one. We should have, let's see, downloads, so I have the sword downloaded picture that I want. I'm going to drag it onto that sphere and then minimize that and put it onto this. Now, the things that this looks kind of all right, apart from that it is actually a little bit too thin. And how do we make sure that we don't squish our sword or our picture so that it is the correct aspect ratio and isn't distorted in any way? What we're going to do is actually pay attention to the resolution of this image, so we can see, if we go to the details, it is 700 by 922, and even though I'm working in centimeters, I'm just going to change this to be 92.2 and this to be 70, and that now is the correct size. Okay. Now I'm just going to double check as well what direction I've created this text tutorial in, just so that when I'm talking about the x-axis or the y-axis, we don't get mixed up. So if I just unhide these, yeah, I thought so. My swords are pointing forward on the x-axis, so I'm just gonna hide unselected, and I'm going to with my angle snaps enabled, so that's A on the keyboard to turn them on and off. I'm going to snap it to 90 degrees so that the sword is pointed along this x-axis. Okay, so left and right would be on the y-axis, and Z is up and down. Okay, and that's just so that if I say work on a particular axis, you know exactly which one I'm talking about as well, especially when it comes to symmetry later on. So we have that now. To get the scaling correct later, so because the sword is probably going to be longer than 92 centimeters, that's quite a short sword, we can then go and chuck on an edit poly modifier. So I have my modifier set customized here, and it's going to be really useful for you to create your own. So if we configure modifier sets here, and we can create a new one, whatever you want. And there are some default ones provided to you as well. But so you could create custom set, and we could say, let's just give ourselves a few buttons, and whatever is in there by default is going to be pre-populated, but we're just going to make sure that we have some that are just for quick reference. We know we're going to be using symmetry for this. We're going to be using turbo smooth a lot for this. We're going to use edit poly a lot for this, so let's go find that. We're going to use potentially weighted normals is what I'm looking for now. If I can find it, there we go. And then once you've got whatever you want in there, we could just put in a couple others in here. Let's say FFD is generally a good modifier, and we do use a bend later on in the tutorial as well. So we've got those, and if I said tutorial save, okay, click OK, and now it has customized these modifiers, so we don't have to go into the modifier list and find them, and it just makes it a lot simpler, and you can actually save these and move them around different machines. It's quite useful to have, especially if you're working on your home computer. Alright, so the next thing that we want to go over is adding on that edit poly onto here. So I prefer to add on edit polys rather than to right click and convert to editable poly like that, because we can disable and enable them and add them as modifiers, and just if we do anything wrong, we can delete it, and we can go back and make adjustments. Say we did want segments in there or some other thing, and we'll see this as we go through the tutorial. But now that we've done that, I could go in here, and it was we were talking about getting the size of the sword correct. So I can press R on the keyboard to get my scale tool up, and then I could get a box that is, I don't know, let's say 150 centimeters, and then scale this up and say sword is probably going to be at least 1.5 meters. Based off this, off our reference, the character's probably around about 5.5 foot tall, so looks to be about 1.5 meters, and we don't, we can change that at an edit poly modifier level later on, but this is just a good guide size, so we're about the right scale. Right then, so we've got our reference in place now, and I'm going to also just move it just slightly down underneath the grid, and I'm going to hold down Shift and drag up a copy of this, and make sure that copy is highlighted, not an instant or a reference. And we probably should name this as sword blade. There we go. All right then. So what we're going to do with this now is go into vertex mode. We could press 1 on the keyboard to get to that really quickly, and start cutting out the blade shape. So I'm going to start at the tip and go across. And just keep clicking, adding these in up to the middle, and then close that off. Okay, and then I'm going to right click to disable that, and then I'm going to press the faces tool, select the face outside of that, and delete it. And now we have our blade silhouette started. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is use a cut tool to just turn this n-gon into more even polygons. So I'm going to use the cut tool now, and quadded polygons. So click these across like so. Okay. Now that we've got that, what I'm also going to do is just chuck on a grey material on that, just so it's a bit easier to see against the background. I'm also going to change my viewport to standard, just so that we don't get any shadows, because I don't need to see any shadows right now. Right then, so if we press T, we can see a sword like this, and we also have a rogue vert here, so we can click target world and just weld that in. We want to select the middle of the sword, so I'm going to hold down Control on my keyboard, but I don't want these bits here. What I want to do is rotate the camera around and lift up on the Z-axis the thickness of the sword. So this would be the center of the sword, and this would be the blade end. Okay, so it would have this sort of tilt, and we're making 1/4 of the sword because it is symmetrical on 2 different axes. Okay, so we only need to model this part and then use symmetry to complete the rest of the sword. Once we have that, the next step is to add on a turbo smooth. So we helpfully created that for ourselves. So we're going to click edit poly, so this applies to the whole model and not just what our selection was, and add on a turbo smooth modifier. And what that does is just adds in a little bit more topology for us to start refining the silhouette that we had. Okay, so we now want to start modifying this new topology because it's too round here, and if we press Alt X and press T on the top viewport, we can see we've now changed the overall shape of it. So we need to refine this. So we can click edit poly again and put on another editable poly in the stack. If you didn't follow that step, it would be in here to find and add on. Okay. We can press 1 on the keyboard and now go into vertex mode and start moving this into the curve that we would expect to see from this, and moving it along if it needs to. Now the sword should be straight from pretty much here, here, here. So I'm going to press R on the scale and I'm going to scale it along the y-axis all the way down, and then you can see as I do that it evens out all of the locations of all of these, and we get a completely, there's no stair stepping as we move along this line, but you can see the stair stepping because there is an angle going from here, and we can see that from our reference art as well, but the step finishes just here and then it is completely straight and then only starts to curve again right at the end there. And we can now move these across and get the curve honed in much better. And then I'm going to use that same technique on the x-axis to straighten out that, and you can see on a more egregious case here what that actually does as I click and scroll it. So now let's straighten up all of these. Along here. So this is going to be a tutorial where you follow along with the technique that I'm using, but I'm not giving you the exact numerical values of where verts are going. You're going to be using your eye and your judgment as to how well you are following the reference, and the reference is the guide, and the principles that we're applying here can be applied to any 3D model moving forward. Okay, so we've got that now, and next we want to use Swift Loop. Okay, so you might have the top of your 3ds Max looking like this. Make sure that you've got these tools expanded here, and you can now go into the modeling tools and click Swift Loop, and what this allows us to do is add in extra topological lines. Now what I'm actually looking at to guide this is not this reference, because you can't see it. I'm using the reference here, or any of these where we can see, but there is not so much on that one or that one, but definitely these two. But there is a line where the sword dramatically sharpens off, so, and we're going to use this as a guide to place that in. And just click to place, and now we've got that, and it's went all the way to the tip of the sword. And what we're going to do is rotate our camera around, and just as we'd lifted up that other bit, I'm going to bring this up so that again the sword has an amount of thickness just before it tapers off into the sharp bladed part of the weapon. Just bring it down a very slightly. And then the next bit will be, so while we've got this selected, so if you do deselect it, you can double click it, hold down Control, and then shrink the selection after selecting polygon mode, and you should have only this face selected. And what we can do now is click Auto Smooth. Because we've got 45 degrees selected, nothing on this other than maybe this degree angle here should have, it should all have the same smoothing group, and we can see it did apply only one smoothing group. So all of this is now straightened up, smooth together. So if I actually reduce this down to maybe like 30, now we can see it's got 2, and we should see an angle of sharpness here as well. So now let's see, if we click off this, turn off X-ray mode, we can see that we've got those different shading groups on the main body of the sword and the edge of the sword. Okay, now I do know we've got a bit of a duckbill going on here, and we fix that later on in the tutorial, but we can also see, because we reduced that angle down, we also have a separate smoothing group here as well, as you would expect on the blade. Now I'm wondering if we can see on any of the reference where it's a bit pixelated on that. Yeah, we can't quite see, but I would expect there to be a sharp point there, just as there is here. Okay, so yeah. The next step is, now that we've smoothed that down, is to add on symmetry. Okay, so we can click our model again, add on symmetry, and we can see it has mirrored along this axis. We can see the orange mirror has appeared, and if we also mirror along the y-axis, sorry, not the y-axis, sorry, the x-axis, and then flip that mirror, we should get for a completed blade. Okay, so now let's have a look at how this looks. We do have a bit of a curve going on here, and we do have the hard edge here, but on symmetry it has smoothed together the edges, so it kind of looks like we've got quite a blunt weapon. That's what we're going to work on next. So we have this, and we're going to go on, stack on another edit poly. So you can see how this is very non-destructive now. So if we disable all of these, we can go right back to when it was just a plane. It's all saved in here, so we can go through all of the steps and make any changes. Okay, so now we have that. We want to assign the smoothing groups onto this in the correct place. So if I go back to here, what I want to do is choose biangle, select the top, and because biangle is at 45 degrees, it won't select the other side because there's a greater than 45 degree angle on the transition to the other side of the blade, but everything on this side is the same. So what we're going to do is auto smooth on that, and now when we have a look at it, we have the transition here and here, but you can see now we've lost that bit there. So let's go refer back to exactly how I did this in the tutorial, and we want hard edges to appear here and here. Okay, so let's do that control click and shrink, and that doesn't work for us. Let's try turning off by angle and holding down shift. Will we be able to loop this across? Okay, what we need to select is the blade edges, so we should be able to double click this, hold down control, there we go, and now we have all of these selected. And if we click auto smooth on that, we should, because the difference will be on all of these. Okay, there's a greater than 45-degree angle on all of them, apart from this side. So now if I go back to here, bring it down to 30 is what we'd said, try again. Now, yeah, we get that hard edge here as well, just on that bit. Okay, now we need to get the one down the central line. This one's a little bit easier. So we're going to go onto face mode, biangle, select the top. We're going to shrink it, and then we're going to press T on our keyboard, disable biangle, hold down Alt, and drag a box over that, and click auto smooth. We can drag this all the way up because we definitely want this all to be one smoothing group. And then we do exactly the same thing on the bottom. So we select a bottom edge, shrink it, biangle, press T. We can press Alt X so that we can see through the selection. Deselect by Alt, using Alt, and then assign a smoothing group to that as well. Now when we come off this, we have a hard edge in the center of the sword on each of the blade tips, and we can now move on with further modeling. So if we look at the sword from this angle by pressing L, and this angle by pressing F, we can definitely see we've got some issues going on with the tip of our sword being a bit flat and duck built. So we're going to go into this edit poly and grab these verts here, hold down R to get the scale tool, and squish up, just give some body to some of these. No, not these outer edge ones yet. We want to grab these ones, rotate them around, and give these a bit of body. And we should be able to drag a box over all of these. It's really important that you get in the underneath ones as well, so when we scale apart from them. Now I can see on here, one of the things that's happened is that the symmetry is actually welded this vert onto this vert. They were that close to each other. There is not. So if I were to grab this, you can see the edge is actually on the other side here. So this is something that didn't happen in the text tutorial. So it's a good example. Really, I probably might be able to go over to the symmetry without breaking everything and do a not weld seam. Actually, yes, we will do that. Go down to this one. This might undo some of our work, but just bring that, just this one vert, just bring it up. So we've went down there, and now if I go back to here, we should. Yes, there we go. That's fixed it. What I did was go down to the previous edit poly, and because in the symmetry it welds it, I've just brought up this vertex here before the symmetry is applied in vertex mode. So if I disable that and disable that, that's all I've done. I've just lifted up this vertex, and this vertex could also be lifted up as well. So if we bring these up, then re-enable that one, re-enable that one, go back onto them. Quite often you'll get lots of issues with going down into edit polys, but if it's a very simple change like that, we won't have any problems. So now we can select both of them, and as they both exist, we can control select all of these and give a bit more body to the tip of the sword. I only want those ones and those ones, and so this is going to be very much you going in yourself and manually adjusting it so that the tip of the sword looks like it flows properly in, because we don't have very good reference. But what you would expect the flow of a blade to end up into this final tip. And then I'm going to go from this angle, and I'm going to have a look at my reference, and I think really this looks okay. I don't want any of that. Don't want that. Don't want that. Don't want these. So I'm just selecting these parts here, and I'm just going to get the camera so we can see exactly what I'm doing, and I'm just trying to get it into the shape, the elliptical shape that I think that the blade should look. Now that's looking a lot more how I would expect the reference image to look, the silhouette of it from this angle. If we could get a reference image from this side as well, that would be even more beneficial for a project like this, but I couldn't seem to find one. So at this point now, I would say this stack is ready to collapse. So you might even want to just copy one off, just in case we want to go back, and then convert to an editable poly. And I think that is a good step for the blade to collapse the stack. And so we are now at the process, the part where we want to start booleaning in it. So this bit of the sword, we'll probably delete this at the end of the 3D model, because we never see this part, but I've just clicked border, selected that and capped it so that it is a solid shape, because the boolean might have issues if we didn't have a solid shape here. Okay, so we're now at a point where we want to cut out this part of the sword, just so like the reference, so it doesn't go all the way through, but it is a chunk of the sword missing, as can be seen on our reference image. So the way I think that we should go about this is to go onto our extended primitives and grab a capsule. And if we create this about the width of that, drag it up, you can see it's there. And then we're going to press E, rotate it to 90 degrees on its side, position it, move it over, and we want it to have 8 sides, just so that we have a nice amount of topology for the end here. And then we want to mess around with the height and move that across here. Okay, so one of the things that I've noticed with some of the extended primitives here, can you see the topology is stuttering depending on how long it is? We actually want this topology, so we might have to manually add this in. This didn't happen to me in the text version of it, but I'll show you how we can do that. Okay, so we have got that to about the size that we want, but we just need to maybe make the radius a little bit smaller. We can now put an edit poly on top of this, and we want to get the element mode, squish it down a little bit, and move it down into the sword. And where we want to move it is so that this vertice is exactly in line with this edge. No matter how perfect we get it, we're probably going to have some cleanup to do, but getting it as close as possible. And we can see that, you know, we can go in and really manually get that quite close. How we can get the exact height would be to click onto this mesh, grab vertex mode, click one of the vertices on this middle portion, and get its Z height. Now, what I'm going to do to simplify this is this is the reason why we move this plane a little bit lower down, is I'm going to actually zero out the sword, zero out this. I'm going to, well, actually, just because this is what's going to inform us. Select that vert is 1.25, and this one is now minus 1.215. There we go. So I'm going to copy that value, and I'm going to give that, because the position for this, we're going to click Effect Pivot, Center to Object, turn off Effect Pivot, and then paste that value into there, and it is now exactly where we want it. We're going to hold down Shift, copy out another one, and paste that into there, but just add in the minus value and press Enter, and it is now exactly where we want it. Okay, and it should help us with cleanup of the mesh after we have done our boolean. So let's turn off X-ray mode on that. We're going to select our sword, and we are going to go on to compound objects, pro boolean, subtraction, start picking, click, and that did not work. Okay, lovely. So I think, let's see. Pro boolean, subtraction, start picking, worked this time. I don't know why. Okay. It should work for you for the first time. There should absolutely be no issues. It's a very simple Boolean operation. Maybe I have the wrong thing selected. I'll review the footage. But now we can see we've clicked out that bit, and it does look like we have the result exactly that we want. If I go out of, let's turn off start picking. If we deselect this, press F4, and it's even done the smoothing groups almost for us, apart from just a little bit of an error here. And that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to go into here. We're going to convert this to an editable poly. We don't need to keep that pro Boolean. And we're going to go onto faces, and the face selection is already done for us. So we click auto smooth, and then we're going to zoom in, turn on vertices, and just get in really tight onto these and see that these all just need to be welded together. So just scroll that up, make sure that they're definitely welded in, and then we're going to target weld that into that, and then do exactly the same to the bottom as well. And weld, and then target that and that. There we go. So because of the shape that we used, we do have pretty much now, if we delete those out, so that is now a 1, 2, 3, 4 quad. And if we delete out control and backspace to do this, that is now also a quad. Okay. We've got quads inside of that, but we do not have quads on this face in particular, but a few other places as well. Now, the next step really is completely optional. I think that only if you really wanted to take this into a high poly workflow. When we look at this blade, it looks absolutely fine. There's no issue with this. It's if you wanted to start adding on maybe an open subdiv workflow or a double turbo smooth workflow. So if we added on a turbo smooth, we might start to get some stretching and issues going on here. Even if we turn on smoothing groups, we've got horrible things happening. The way to fix that is to clean up this topology, which requires you to undo some of your work and reapply some of the work by literally deleting half of the sword, cleaning up the topology, and creating a fully quadded blade. I'm going to go through that just so that you can see exactly what that process looks like, but you can entirely choose not to do this. Okay, so I'm going to delete that half of the sword, and I'm going to delete that half of the sword as well. In fact, I'm going to use this viewport so I can select it much easier. Delete, and now, so what I'm looking at is how to flow this out of the sword. So let's go boom, 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 and I'm just doing quads all the way through for now. Then once we've got quads, we'll look at optimization. I don't even want that there. That's all fine. These just need target welding. and the artifacts that your Boolean has left behind are going to be different to the ones that my Boolean has left behind. It's just the nature of Booleans. They're not predictable in what they'll do, but this process will be very similar, and you should be able to clean it up and replicate the topology that I have, as we started and completed very similar processes. So this is all complete quads on all of this, and I could really, all of here is quads as well, leave it there. But then there's some really easy optimization that we can do as well. And what that looks like is going to be using target world and seeing what parts of this topology adds nothing to the silhouette of the 3D model. So all of this should be complete straight lines, starting from here to here. So what I'm actually going to do is weld this to here, weld this to here, and I'm going to get this edge here, because that's a triangle and that's a triangle. Control backspace. This is now, if I count, 1, 2, 3, 4. That is a quad. Okay, even though the shape is a triangle, there are 4 sides to it because of that vertice in here. Okay, or if I select this and I hold down Control, I select 1, 2, 3, 4 verts, and that is a quad. So now that's a quad, and if I target weld this, and this, I've created a triangle here which I actually need to build off of. And now if I target weld that onto that, onto that, onto that, and then with this, Control backspace. Now, this is not an amazing quad to have, in that once Turbo Smooth starts to add in topology, it doesn't like it when there is an angle like this in the shape of a where it's almost like a triangle with an added on element to it. The way I can alleviate this is just by extending that out a little bit and just building it so it is now at least just a triangle, and it's just slightly changing the shape of that bit there, and also just bringing in this just so that it is a little bit less distorted, but that should still be. And if we have a look at our reference, I haven't really even changed anything too awfully. Right, so let's have a look at that. Oh no, yeah, we're not moving that one because this is establishing curvature, but this one definitely is not. And I'm just trying to now give space to the topology, so that when we add turbo smooths on later, it has directions to go. I just think I want to do a different thing here. I'm just going to have a play around. I think this could be a better flow. No, this won't work. Yeah, I definitely don't want to do that. No, I'm going to leave it how it was. But it will function. There'll be some strange bits, but it shouldn't affect the shading. Okay, now looking at this, I'm going to go that into here because this is not changing anything in topology. And that one into here. So what I'm always trying to do is try to create two triangles next to each other so that I can clean them up that way. So I don't want to mess with this quad. I don't want to make a triangle next to that one and have to clean it up. I probably want to now put this into here. And then delete that. There we go. And then this will actually create a triangle, but it's not flowing off into anything. This is absolutely fine to have, but it's just yeah, further optimized. Potentially even. No, we don't want to do that. It's too extreme. You could do that and have this triangle, probably wouldn't cause any issues, but I'm not going to, because I think it could cause some pinching once we add on Turbo Smooth later. This is now further optimized. I can't get rid of any, it seems quite dense over here. I mean, actually, yes, I could do, hang on. Oh, this is establishing, yeah, all of these are establishing curvature here, so I can't weld them into there because it changes the shape and I want to keep that shape there. Technically I could probably get rid of that one there, but then I'm creating a triangle where topology is going to flow, and I don't want to do that. So right then, okay, so now we get to reapply with our new topology on here. We can go symmetry. Oh, let's select the correct object, symmetry, and then on the y-axis, no, it's the x-axis. There we go. So we've got our double mirror going on, and if we add on a turbo smooth by smoothing groups only, we can start to see the topological flow and just seeing if there's any issues. So we're getting like some weird flow going through here, but when we turn it off, we actually don't have any issues. We just need to reapply our smoothing groups to get some hard edges back. But we've got this one and it is now looking much smooth. So if I show you what that's doing, that's the difference between that enabled and, so you can see the curvature going around here and onto there makes a big difference. So let's go onto here, this symmetry, add on an edit poly before the turbo smooth. We'll turn this off for a moment and just select the top edge, because this is the only bit that has it. Shrink. Yeah, that's it's going to be a bit annoying. Top. So what I'm trying to select is I need to turn on back face cull so I don't get the other side of the sword. Turn off biangle. It's going to be a bit finicky to select this. There we go. And then deselect all of this. And that is the selection that we want. So not on the other side. We'll do exactly the same thing on the other side, but this part, give it its own smoothing group. Now what that does, and we'll repeat this process again, but it gives us that hard edge, and then when we apply the turbo smooth, we keep the hard edge there. We need to do it on the blade as well, so we need to do turn off that, double click this, hold down control, select faces, go down to about 30 degrees, click auto smooth, and that should now have re-split all of these. So now when I turn on turbo smooth, we get a really smooth part here. This I can see. I've noticed pro boolean coming up on this plane. This is why the boolean didn't work. I'd selected the wrong mesh. But yeah, you can see all of that. This curvature smoothing along here. That's what we're doing. Next is going to be the bottom side of the sword. So biangle, and we don't want to have the turbo smooth enabled. Biangle, shrink to not have those parts of the sword. I'm going to press let's see, to isolate selection. There we go. It just makes it so I can only see that for a second. Disable, turn off biangle, use alt to deselect all of that, just control click to select all of them, and auto smooth that side. And now turn on that. Then, so this turbo smooth has smoothing groups enabled. If we add on another turbo smooth on top of that, what it's going to do is smooth everything without smoothing groups enabled, and we get this really clean. If we might even have to bump this up now to like 2 or 4. Don't go too high, you will crash your PC. But now we get a really clean, sharp blade with those creases set in here and no smoothing errors. Everything looks exactly as you would expect and as realistic for baking this high polygon information. When we talk about normal mapping in the future, this is the workflow, one of the workflows that you could use, but it's all just based off just that sort here. And this is why I said this step is optional, because we probably won't do anything with that extra information for a little bit for now. But that is now at 1 hour the blade completed. So I'm going to stop the recording and make this an episodic series.